If you were with us last year, you know the order of coaches. I didn't have anything to do with this, and when they sent me the list, I objected to our first speaker. Because, you know, I have work to do tomorrow, and I need to get home. As you heard, I have a wife who has no eyesight, so I need to get back home. I told my wife, I said, if we can get past the first speaker and get him off of there by 10 o'clock, I have a chance to get home by noon. By midnight, excuse me. First coach up, Oldenburg Academy's Ace Moorman, surprisingly in his 8th year at this school. Just remember, I will always have the microphone last, so before you do anything, I'll be the last one with the microphone. On the 28th, they're going to host South Decatur. Please welcome Ace Moorman.
Thank you, Coach, and thanks to everybody for coming out, and most of all, thanks to Scott and Sean for putting all this together. They work tirelessly, as Oasis does for Oldenburg Academy. Our terrific soccer coach, Kenny Getz, is also here, and all those guys do so much for Oldenburg Academy, and they're the ones who put all this together. Before we get started, I would be remiss if we didn't all note that T.J. White, who played for Switzerland County a couple years ago, was a really terrific player, an ORVC standout, was killed in a car wreck, I believe this weekend, so certainly any prayers are welcome for them. Coach Dennis couldn't make it. We knew that prior to that tragic accident, but we knew he couldn't make it. They actually have a big event at Switzerland County that coincided with this get-together, so he couldn't make it because of that. But certainly we will pray for his soul's repose. So anyway, on to better things to think about and talk about. High school basketball in Indiana, I mean, it's such a great time of year. I think about what in the world we would do here in Indiana if it wouldn't be for Indiana high school basketball to get through when we have these snowy winters. And we all look forward to it. And we certainly are looking forward to it at OA. I have been down here for 7 or 8 years. You knew more about them. 8 years. I do. It does seem like 20. It does seem like 20. Anyway, I grew up in Batesville and taught and coached up in the Ben Davis school system for a long, long time. And when I left Ben Davis and came down here, a lot of my buddies who are just slightly older than I am, I'm 55 now, some of those guys are retired a little while, and they're like, what in the world? First of all, to give you an idea of the size of Ben Davis, my students there would be like, Mr. Moore, where are you from? And when I said from Batesville, they had never heard of Batesville. Like, are there any large towns around Batesville? And I said, well, the biggest one is Greensburg. They had never heard of Greensburg. I said, are there any big schools? And I said, well, East Central. And they said, oh, really, East Central? That sounds like just directions. But what's the, how many kids go there? And I said, 1,400. Is that right, Diz? About around 1,400, which is the size of the freshman class at Ben Davis. So they said, well, you don't have any big schools down there. But what they would always want to know about us folks, they're like, do you people down in southeastern Indiana down there, do you do anything but eat corn? And I said, well, we eat a lot of corn, but not because when we would leave Ben Davis and go outside of 465 and they see all those cornfields, they didn't realize there was a different type of corn. They're like, what do you guys eat corn every meal? I'm like, yeah, well, we have corn flakes, we have cream of corn, we have corn on the cob at nighttime. They're like, you country folks do nothing but eat corn. So anyway, my colleagues that I taught with, when I decided to come back down here, they were like, well, they couldn't understand why you would leave a secular haven like Ben Davis to come down. They started coming down. In my very first year, they'd come down to OA to games, and they have never missed since. And the crowd of those Ben Davis, now retired men, grows all the time. And the reason for it is, which we found out, is what we're enjoying here. It's chicken down here. That's why they come down. They go to Wagner's, and they go to the Bra House, and I tell them about Fireside, which they haven't tried out yet, but that's what, when they come into our gym, they used to be there for, halfway through the JV game. Now they get in there reeking of chicken fat, halfway through the varsity game. I got to save them seats and stuff. So they love it down here. And of course, what is the thing that they have learned down here that we all know? The key to chicken down here is the way we cut it. And when they first came down, they'd say, man, you're right, the chicken down is unbelievable. But they could never get over the most important piece of chicken to us, because we cut it differently, is the back. They're like, what in the hell is that one piece of chicken you guys eat? There is a, now, of course, they're connoisseurs of the back, right? So those guys come back. Now, before I go any further, I will say, when Dick Dullahan, Coach Level, hopefully these other guys, hopefully I'm not so old that I'm the only guy that remembers Dick.
No, I think he's legendary.
Okay. When Dick retired at Ben Davis, when he, the school, we had 185 teachers, so that was a lot of, you know, this is bigger than Oldenburg Academy. When Dick retired, we had the docket of the teachers that were going to speak, right? Well, Dick said he wanted to go last. Well, of course he wanted to go last. And there is no finer guy than Dick Dullahan. But when we were all out there, when I looked around and saw it, when Dick got up to speak, everybody got their watches out and hit the stopwatch there. And then 45 minutes later, Dick bid farewell to us. So I didn't want. Yeah, I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I don't want to go down that. So you want to hear about the Twisters? Well, I don't want to tell you much about the Twisters. Actually, I do. But we all kind of hang on each other's words about who's a good player, who's not a good player. We should be all right this year. I think we were very good last year. We graduated some very, very good players, but we do return some very good players. One of which, Nick Bischoff, is a senior for us. Come back. He's a terrific wide receiver on our football team. And Kyle, Nobby, and I are both rooting for our football teams, right? Yeah. Batesville and Lawrenceburg, a lot of them still alive. I know that Kyle and I, we seem to really have a lot of our key basketball guys also playing football. So it's kind of like after each play, I look out there and see, make sure the Hoopers are still all right. Nick's a really terrific football player. He's a really good basketball player. He's a senior. He'll come back and contribute for us. Matt Moorman is a good football player. He's our quarterback. He's our leading scorer, returning scorer. He averaged 19 points for us last year. He's a good basketball player as well as a good football player. Drew Klepfer comes back for us, returning starter. Really, really quality shooter that's added some things to his game. In case you play the Twisters this year, he's a different player, and he's a very good player. Tyler Hesselbrock, and here's the difference with OA this year if you play us. Never in my time at OA have any of the kids kept their word on one thing. The kids that go to OA are the salt of the earth kids. They're the nicest kids you'd ever want to run into. But the one thing they never kept their word on was they would always tell me is you got to picture what an OA freshman looks like. He's like 5'4" and like 84 pounds, slightly smaller than the smallest girl that any of us ever went to high school with. And I'm like, oh, wow. They're like, Coach Moorman, I'm going to go out for basketball. And I'm like, oh, terrific. And well, they're like, don't worry, because my folks say I'm going to get really tall. I'm like, well, good. I'm looking forward to it. But they never did. Tyler Hesselbrock came to us. Tyler Hesselbrock was that kid, and now he's 6'5" as a senior. And he's a pretty good football player for us, too. He's thin, but he's a guy who kept his word. Jason Klein is a tight end on our football team. He's also on the basketball team, kind of a big banger. We had a 5'10" freshman, bigger than your normal freshman at OA. Mike Wanstrot. I'm telling you, this guy, here's your early scouting report. Look out for this guy. Tremendous football player. Already attracting D1 looks as a wide receiver. Hadn't played football in years. 6'5", really fast. Matt, my son's the quarterback. He figured out early that when in doubt, just throw it up really high to Mike, and things turn out okay, unless you throw it really poorly. Mike is going to be a fantastic player this year. Owen Sporleader, I'm going to tell you a story about Owen briefly. Owen, the nicest kid you would ever meet, but this is divine providence. This could happen to you if you send your kid to OA. Divine providence sometimes steps in there. The Sporleaders over here could tell you. The nicest boy ever. Second last play of the game against South Decatur. He gets tackled by the face mask. Gets up and takes a swing. I didn't see it, but he takes this huge swing at a South Decatur kid. Our coaching staff, Coach Gilman, those guys disputed, like, we're gonna look at the film. Well, when they looked at the film, like, well, there's no disputing it. He's the nicest guy on the team, takes a swing. I mean, he was thrown out, deserved to be thrown out, didn't he? Thank God he was, right? He gets thrown out of the game the next week. Of course, he's out for that game. He's out the next week. The next game we're going and we played at Earlham College. Well, on the way down there, he's complaining and feeling terrible. His folks are saying during the day, like, hey, we know where you're not feeling well. You can't play. He wants to come home early. Stays at school. All the way down there, feeling terrible. Vomits as he gets down there. As it turns out, 4 o'clock in the morning, finally says, hey, listen, I can't take it anymore. I am feeling terrible. Has a appendicitis, right? Has to have an emergency appendectomy. If he plays in that game, takes a big hit, maybe this guy gets killed, right? But that's what happens when you go to OA. God looks out for you. Owen is a really good wide receiver. He's a terrific basketball player. I won't go through all my JV guys for Coach Lovell will get angry with me. I will say this though, as I leave you, the guys I was talking to my friends Brian at South Decatur. If you guys were here last year, there's one guy who really has really big shoes to fill. And Brian, that's you. If you remember the speech last year, it was the quintessential speech. And down the line, we're talking about big kids that could help your basketball program. And perhaps down the line, if you stay at South Decatur long enough, you're going to reap the rewards of last year's coach who spoke of you want to talk about a long-term strategy. And he had a long-term strategy, and he's moved north, and he's taken that strategy up there. We still stay in contact via some text messages, and I write him about this speech last year, and I said, have you and your wife approved of that strategy up north? Because he's from up north, and he said, absolutely. So anyway, I do appreciate everybody coming out here. I must tell you this, that I always root for all of you guys, and unless you're playing OA, I pull for you guys in the sectional and throughout the tournament. Thrilled a couple years ago when when Greensburg won the state championship back-to-back years. Absolutely thrilled, as we all were. South Ripley's deep run last year. Root for everybody in here throughout the tournament. And anyway, I appreciate everybody coming out, and wish you guys all the best. And we will look forward to seeing many of you guys on the hardwood. Thanks a lot.